Now, the sad news that the film star Val Kilmer, who played Batman and Jim Morrison, as well as starring in Top Gun, has died at the age of 65. The Oscar-winning American actor Gene Hackman, along with his wife Betsy, have been found dead in their home in New Mexico.
In 2025, Hollywood lost some of its biggest names, but the world barely noticed. A TV legend died alone with his wife's body for 9 days. A soap opera queen fell downstairs and never got back up. A child star was found unconscious in her luxury apartment at just 39 years old. These weren't just deaths. They were cover-ups, family secrets, and tragedies that the industry tried to bury. What really happened behind closed doors will shock you. Richard Chamberlain. Richard Chamberlain's death on March 29, 2025, in Waimanalo, Hawaii, closed the curtain on one of television's most fascinating lives. He was just 2 days shy of his 91st birthday. At the height of his fame, he was receiving 12,000 fan letters every single week. But behind the perfect smile and steady gaze, there was a man who had been hiding for most of his life. He was born George Richard Chamberlain on March 31, 1934 in Beverly Hills, but not in the glittering mansions people assumed. His family lived on the wrong side of Wilshire Boulevard. His father struggled with severe alcoholism before later becoming a respected Alcoholics Anonymous speaker who traveled the world. Richard grew up feeling like an outsider long before he ever stepped onto a sound stage. When Dr. Kildare hit television screens in 1961, it turned him into America's heartthrob almost overnight. But the fame was a double-edged sword. He feared one truth about himself could destroy everything. He was gay in an era when that could mean the end of a career. To the public, he appeared at premieres with beautiful actresses on his arm. In reality, it was all part of a carefully crafted act. The act worked. He became the undisputed king of television miniseries. In 1980, Shogun captivated audiences across the country. 3 years later, the Thornbirds became a cultural phenomenon, drawing 60% of American television viewers and earning 16 Emmy nominations. All the while, he kept his private life locked away. The truth finally came in 2003. At 70 years old, he released his memoir, Shattered Love, and told the world what many in Hollywood had quietly known. He revealed he had lived in fear for decades, hiding a 20-year relationship with producer Martin Rabbit from the public eye. Wings, Hauser, Wings. Hauser's life was the kind of story Hollywood usually makes up, except his was real. He was born Gerald Dwight Hauser on December 12, 1947, right in Hollywood. Standing 6 feet 2, he would one day appear in over 100 films and TV shows. But the road there began in a way that seemed impossible for someone destined for the screen. In the early 1970s, he had nothing. He and his infant daughter Bright were homeless, living in an empty garage while he scraped by as a folk musician and street performer. Nights were cold. Days were long. Every coin he earned felt like a small victory. Those years carved a raw honesty into him, the kind you can't fake. It became the heartbeat of his acting. His big moment came in 1982 with the exploitation thriller Vice Squad. He played Ramrod, a psychotic pimp so unpredictable that audiences couldn't decide whether to look away or keep watching. He didn't just play the role, he inhabited it, and he even wrote and sang the movie's theme song, Neon Slime, letting his music bleed into his performance. Life off-screen was no less colorful. In the early 1990s, he was in a relationship with Linda Blair, the Exorcist star whose own life had been shaped by fame and controversy. Hauser's career jumped between serious, respected films like A Soldier's Story in 1984 and low-budget cult flicks that earned him a strange but fitting nickname, the biggest star you've never heard of. In his later years, illness caught up with him. Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease made breathing a struggle. Oxygen tanks became part of his daily life. Still, he carried himself with the same defiant spirit he'd always had. On March 15, 2025, at 77, Wings Hauser died in Santa Monica. He left behind his wife, Callie Lily Hauser, and his son, Yellowstone actor Cole Hauser. George Wendt. George Robert Wendt died on May 20, 2025, at the age of 76. It was the quiet end of a man whose face and voice had been a part of millions of living rooms for more than a decade. He passed away in his sleep at his home in Studio City. The news spread, but the response felt strangely muted for someone who once made an entire country shout, "Norm!" without thinking. For years, his health had been quietly collapsing. What looked peaceful in the end was the closing chapter of a long and painful decline. The official death certificate listed cardiac arrest, but that was only the last step in a long chain of damage. His body had been fighting on multiple fronts: congestive heart failure, coronary artery disease, hypertension, end-stage renal disease, meaning his kidneys had completely failed, hyperlipidemia, where cholesterol levels become dangerously high. It wasn't sudden. It was a slow war that he was losing bit by bit, even as the public still pictured him smiling on a bar stool. For most people, George Wendt would always be Norm Peterson from Cheers, the man who sat in the same spot and turned every entrance into a joke the audience loved. That role earned him 6 straight Emmy nominations between 1984 and 1989. He was in all 275 episodes of the show's 11-season run, one of only 3 cast members to do it. Cheers itself became one of television's biggest success stories. 117 Emmy nominations, 28 wins. When the final episode aired in 1993, more than 80 million people watched. That kind of success should have guaranteed a smooth road after. But life after Cheers was nothing like the show's steady comfort. In 1995, his own sitcom, The George Wendt Show, was canceled after just 1 month. Other projects came and went without making a dent. The fame never left completely, but the momentum did. Gene Hackman. Gene Hackman's final days felt like something torn from one of his own movies. It was February 2025, and the world would not learn the truth until more than a week later. Hackman, the 2-time Oscar winner, was living quietly in his Santa Fe home. His life had been long, full of gritty roles, and a career worth $40 million. Yet his last chapter was cruel in ways no script could soften. It began with his wife, Betsy Arakawa. She was 65, still vibrant, until she fell ill with what seemed like a severe flu. She searched the internet for answers, reading about breathing exercises, looking for ways to ease the tightness in her chest. She even made a doctor's appointment for February 12th, but she never made it there. The truth was far more dangerous. She had contracted hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, a rare and deadly infection caused by rodent droppings somewhere inside their home. Around February 11th, she died. Hackman was already deep in the fog of advanced Alzheimer's. He could not understand what had happened to his wife. She remained where she fell, and he stayed in the house with her, unable to call for help. Days passed in silence. His health, already fragile, began to fail. On February 17th, the pacemaker in his chest recorded its final irregular rhythm. His heart gave out, weakened by severe disease and worsened by kidney failure. He died alone, still in the same home where Betsy lay. 9 days later, on February 26th, maintenance workers came to check on the couple. They knocked, then peered through the windows when no one answered. Inside, they saw a scene frozen in time. Hackman and Arakawa were both gone. One of their 3 dogs, Zinna, had died too, while the other 2 had somehow survived. The house was sealed with the eerie stillness of death. At first, investigators treated it like a suspicious case, but there was no foul play, only illness, age, and the cruel quiet of isolation. And so ended the life of one of Hollywood's most respected actors, a man who had walked away from film in 2004 to write Western novels, never seeking the spotlight again. Val Kilmer. Val Kilmer's story feels like something out of a movie. On April 1st, 2025, at the age of 65, he passed away after an 11-year fight with throat cancer. It began in 2014 and slowly took away the thing that had carried his entire career, his voice. The final blow came from pneumonia, a cruel ending to a battle that had already changed him forever. He had been one of Hollywood's most unpredictable actors, able to disappear into any role. When he played Jim Morrison in Oliver Stone's The Doors in 1991, his singing sounded so much like Morrison that even the band members struggled to tell the difference. He didn't just learn the lines, he studied Morrison for months until it was as if the real Morrison had stepped back into the world. In Tombstone, in 1993, he gave the world his unforgettable Doc Holliday. He even learned 1 minute of a Chopin nocturne just for the part, and when it came to Holliday's death scene, he had the crew fill his bed with ice to make the performance feel real. When people asked him how the role affected him, he didn't talk about himself at all. He spoke about Doc Holliday, as if the man had truly lived inside him. But behind the brilliance, there was chaos. Kilmer's reputation for being difficult became almost as famous as his work. On the set of The Island of Dr. Moreau in 1996, his marriage was falling apart. His wife had handed him divorce papers just before filming. Instead of keeping his focus, he let the anger spill into the production. He mumbled his lines, stirred trouble, and pushed the director to his breaking point. John Frankenheimer eventually told the crew he didn't like Kilmer, didn't like his work ethic, and never wanted to work with him again. Everything changed in 2014. The throat cancer diagnosis meant surgery, radiation, chemotherapy, and 2 tracheotomies that altered the way he spoke and breathed for the rest of his life. He survived the cancer, but his body was never the same. His immune system weakened, leaving him vulnerable to illnesses like the pneumonia that finally claimed him. His last big screen role came in 2022, when he returned as Iceman in Top Gun: Maverick. The character was fighting cancer too, a moment that blurred the line between film and reality. Watching him in that role was like watching a farewell, quiet, powerful, and deeply human. Ozzy Osbourne. Ozzy Osbourne's life ended the way he lived it, loud, dramatic, and unforgettable. On July 22, 2025, the world lost the 76-year-old Black Sabbath frontman. He died after a sudden cardiac arrest at his home in Buckinghamshire, England. The official cause was acute myocardial infarction, with coronary artery disease and Parkinson's disease, with autonomic dysfunction also listed. The response was frantic. An air ambulance landed near his house in Chalfont St. Giles and flew just 8 miles to Harefield Hospital. The helicopter stayed there for about an hour with its engines still running, as if waiting for a miracle that never came. Only 17 days earlier, on July 5, 2025, he had given fans one final memory. Back in his hometown of Birmingham, he reunited with Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, and Bill Ward for Back to the Beginning. He could no longer stand. Parkinson's had taken that from him, but seated on a black throne, his voice still carried the weight of decades. His eyes shone, the crowd roared, and it felt like everyone there knew they were witnessing the end of an era. He had lived with a rare genetic form of Parkinson's disease since 2003. Though he only told the world in 2020, by 2025, he couldn't walk at all. Sharon once explained it simply and painfully. You think you're lifting your feet, but they don't move. That's how the disease had stolen his body piece by piece. Still, he refused to fade away quietly. He kept performing, even when every show meant fighting his own body. Ozzy's legacy was never just about the 13 platinum albums or the Prince of Darkness nickname. It was about the chaos, the headlines, the moments no one could forget. In 1982, during a concert, he bit the head off a live bat, a moment that would follow him forever. He threw raw meat into crowds. He danced with death through decades of substance abuse, and somehow he survived it all long enough to shock the world again by becoming a tender, confused, and oddly lovable father on MTV's The Osbournes. That strange mix, the wild man who terrified parents and the dad who made them laugh, is what made him larger than life. David Lynch. David Lynch was unlike anyone else in Hollywood. Born on January 20th, 1946, he would spend more than 50 years creating films and shows that didn't just tell stories. They pulled you into another world. His style was strange, unsettling, and unforgettable. The word Lynchian became its own term, describing a mix of dreamlike beauty and creeping dread. He won a Palme d'Or at Cannes, earned multiple Oscar nominations, and still managed to keep his work fiercely his own. It all began in 1977 with Eraserhead, a black and white nightmare that confused many but fascinated enough people to become a midnight movie legend. That film's success gave him the freedom to push further. In 1986, Blue Velvet shocked audiences with its contrast between sunny small-town America and the disturbing darkness hidden beneath. In 2001, Mulholland Drive twisted reality so deeply that critics still debate its meaning, and many call it his greatest work. Then there was Twin Peaks, the television series in 1990 that mixed soap opera drama, murder mystery, and pure surrealism. It was so different that people couldn't stop talking about it. And when it returned in 2017, it was as strange and gripping as ever. But Lynch's art was not born from imagination alone. At 8 years old, in Spokane, Washington, he saw something that would never leave his mind. A woman, naked and covered in blood, stumbled out of the darkness toward him. It was real. It was terrifying. And it became the seed for many of his most disturbing images, including the scenes in Blue Velvet. From that moment on, his films often returned to the same idea: women in danger, trapped between innocence and horror. You can see it in Inland Empire, in Lost Highway, and of course in Twin Peaks. That same year, when he was still only 8, he also picked up a cigarette. It became a lifelong habit, one that would eventually kill him. In 2024, Lynch revealed he had emphysema. It kept him at home, unable to work without oxygen at his side. On January 15, 2025, he died at the age of 78. The cause was cardiac arrest brought on by chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. His death certificate also noted dehydration as a contributing factor. He passed away at his daughter's home in Los Angeles while wildfires burned through the city. Leslie Charleson. Leslie Charleson was more than a soap opera actress. She was the heartbeat of daytime TV. For 47 years, she walked the halls of General Hospital, breathing life into the fiery and complicated Dr. Monica Quartermaine. Her story began far from the Hollywood lights. She was born on February 22, 1945, in Kansas City, Missouri. At 19, she took her first step into the world of soaps with NBC's A Flame in the Wind in 1964. But it was 1977 when everything changed. That was the year she became Monica. That was the role that would define her. Over the decades, she appeared in more than 2,000 episodes and earned 4 Daytime Emmy nominations. Her acting wasn't just good, it was fearless. In a 2023 interview, she confessed something that stunned fans. When a scene called for a slap, she didn't fake it. She really slapped. She laughed about it, admitting that the moment the cameras rolled, all thoughts of pulling back went out the window. That fearless edge made her chemistry with her on-screen husband, Alan Quatermain, unforgettable. Their marriage was chaos, and passion rolled into one. They cheated. They fought. They tried to kill each other, and through it all, viewers couldn't look away. Her final chapter came faster than anyone expected. On January 12, 2025, Leslie Charleson was gone. The Los Angeles County Medical Examiner explained that she died from the long-term effects of blunt head trauma. The injuries came from a series of severe falls that had left her needing a walker. She was already battling normal pressure hydrocephalus, a dangerous buildup of fluid in the brain, along with atrial fibrillation, arthritis, and asthma. These struggles had quietly been shaping her later years. Michelle Trachtenberg. Michelle Trachtenberg was born on October 11, 1985, and for almost her entire life, the world watched her on screen. Her career began when she was just 3 years old, but it ended far too soon. On the morning of February 26, 2025, she was found unconscious in her luxury Manhattan apartment. It was her mother who discovered her, after police responded to a 911 call at 8:01 a.m. She was only 39 years old. Michelle's career stretched across 3 decades. She captured hearts as Harriet Welsh in Harriet the Spy in 1996, when she was only 11. She became a household name as Dawn Summers, Buffy's younger sister, appearing in more than 60 episodes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer between 2000 and 2003. Later, she reinvented herself, playing Georgina Sparks in Gossip Girl, a scheming socialite who proved Michelle could play far more than the sweet, innocent roles she had started with. Her death news left fans stunned, but what made it even more heartbreaking was what few people knew. In her final years, Michelle had been fighting a silent battle. She had undergone a liver transplant not long before she died, something she never made widely public. Friends said she had been really down emotionally and had confided that she was struggling. The transplant came with serious risks. Around 30% of liver transplant patients develop diabetes, and that was the complication that would ultimately take her life. Her death was not confirmed as being caused by diabetes until April 2025, when toxicology results were released. At first, there was uncertainty because her Orthodox Jewish family opposed an autopsy for religious reasons. Until then, people could only guess. Brian Wilson. Brian Wilson was born on June 20, 1942, and died on June 11, 2025, just days before his 83rd birthday. The official cause was respiratory arrest, with sepsis and cystitis contributing. He was 82, and with him went one of the most extraordinary, turbulent, and heartbreaking careers in music. He gave the world 36 top 40 hits. Songs like Good Vibrations, God Only Knows, and the album Pet Sounds didn't just chart. They became part of the very DNA of modern music. Tom Petty once compared him to Beethoven. Paul McCartney said, God Only Knows brought him to tears. Wilson's lush harmonies and layered wall of sound recordings didn't just change pop, they redefined it. But behind the shimmering surf and sunshine, his life was often shadowed by pain. His father abused him when he was young. He was partially deaf in one ear. He lived with schizoid disorder, which became worse in the chaos of fame. In the late 1960s, drugs and mental illness dragged him down. By the 1980s, he was under the controversial care of psychologist Dr. Eugene Landy, who was accused of exploiting and controlling him. His lifeline came in the form of Melinda Ledbetter Wilson, the woman he called his savior and anchor. She helped pull him back from the brink. But in January 2024, she died unexpectedly. Without her, his dementia deepened quickly. Within months, he was placed under another conservatorship, Anne Burrell. Anne Burrell was hard to miss. Her wild platinum hair and bold personality made her one of Food Network's biggest stars. She seemed unstoppable. She started on TV in 2005 as a sous chef on Iron Chef America with Mario Batali. Just 3 years later, she was hosting her own show, Secrets of a Restaurant Chef. It ran for 9 seasons. From 2010 to 2024, she became the face of Worst Cooks in America, guiding hopeless home cooks through 27 seasons of disasters and victories. Millions loved her sharp wit and tough love style. But away from the cameras, her life was far more complicated. In 2009, former restaurant employees accused her of calling women names like slutty, saggy, hoe, whore, and even stupid dumb whore. They said she made crude remarks about cleavage and sex lives, targeting only female staff. Years later, when her restaurant, Phil and Anne's Good Time Lounge, was shutting down, reports claimed she treated her business partner, Phil Casacelli, coldly, even after he had poured his life savings into the place. On the morning of June 17, 2025, everything came to a heartbreaking end. Around 7:50 a.m., she was found unconscious in the shower of her Brooklyn apartment. Near her were about 100 assorted pills. The medical examiner confirmed it was suicide. She had a dangerous mix in her system: 2 antihistamines, diphenhydramine and cetirizine, alcohol, and amphetamine. She was just 55. She left behind her husband, Stuart Claxton, whom she had married in October 2021, and his son, Javier. Michael Madsen. Michael Madsen died on July 3, 2025. The man who brought some of Hollywood's most unforgettable tough guys to life was gone at 67. They found him in his Malibu home at 8:25 in the morning, unresponsive. The cause was cardiac arrest. His career stretched over 200 films in 4 decades, but there's one role that forever defined him. In 1992, Quentin Tarantino released his first movie, Reservoir Dogs, and Madsen's Mr. Blonde became a cinematic icon. The ear-cutting scene, set to Stealers' Wheels Stuck in the Middle with You, burned itself into film history. He danced casually, almost playfully, while a police officer sat bound and terrified. It was disturbing, unforgettable, and helped cement Tarantino's reputation for mixing charm with violence. Years later, Entertainment Weekly named Mr. Blonde one of the greatest villains in film and TV history. Behind the menace of his characters, there was another Michael. 2 months before he died, in May 2025, he underwent coronary angiography to check for blockages. His health was failing, but he still carried that quiet force he had on screen. His sister, actress Virginia Madsen, said it best when she called him Thunder and Velvet, a poet disguised as an outlaw. It was a reminder that the man who could terrify millions on film might also be the one who, in private, would speak softly and write poetry. Loni Anderson. Loni Anderson was more than a pretty face on television. She was a force, a woman who could light up a room with a smile and silence it with a sharp remark. On August 3, 2025, just 2 days shy of her 80th birthday, she died in Los Angeles from complications of a long illness. It ended a career that had lasted nearly 50 years and left behind some of the most unforgettable stories Hollywood had ever seen. Most people first met her as Jennifer Marlowe on WKRP in Cincinnati, a role she played from 1978 to 1982. She was the glamorous receptionist who knew more than everyone else in the room, and she knew it. Jennifer used her looks like a weapon, but she also kept the chaotic radio station running like clockwork. The role earned her 2 Emmy nominations and 3 Golden Globe nominations, proof that she could break the dumb blonde stereotype and turn it on its head. But her off-screen life often stole the headlines. Her marriage to Burt Reynolds in 1988 seemed like a Hollywood fairy tale. They met on the set of Stroker Ace in 1983, and for a while, they were the golden couple. Then everything unraveled. By the time their marriage ended in 1994, the divorce had turned into a $2 million war. Reynolds accused her of spending $45,000 in just 30 minutes on his platinum card. Anderson accused him of far worse. In 1995, she said he had struck her a dozen times while on drugs. She spoke about living in constant fear of his unpredictable moods, hiring nannies to watch over their adopted son Quentin whenever he was with Reynolds. The custody battle was ugly. There were claims of him throwing furniture at staff and not paying the $15,000 monthly child support. Even with all the drama, Anderson kept working. She played screen legends Jane Mansfield in 1980 and Thelma Todd in 1991, both tragic women whose lives ended too soon. She became a fierce advocate for COPD awareness after watching both her parents suffer from the disease, and many wondered if her own illness was related. In 1995, she told her side of everything in her autobiography, My Life in High Heels. She promised it would be warts and all because she was done hiding. She said she wrote it because she was telling the truth.